Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, we have Bill Morrow with us from Langhorne Carpet Company. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your background.
There's not too much. I grew up outside of Philadelphia and basically grew up in this carpet business. It's been in my family. My grandfather, great-grandfather started it, so that was sort of my that's my history in terms of the carpet world.
Yes. And was that something that you always wanted to do, or?
It was, it's funny when you grow up you're in the business. I worked there in the summers. I came as a little kid. I would visit vendors with my father and my grandfather when I was a child, and I don't think I'd actually planned on it. It just when I got out of college, I just decided that I thought that's what I would like to do.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. I also grew up in a family business and then went to do my own thing for a couple of years, but then I came back. So I get it. And actually my husband started working for my father before I did. So that people think that's funny when I tell them. I'm like, yeah, he did.
That makes it family.
It does, definitely. So so tell me a little bit about the history of the company.
Well, the company started in 1930. My grandfather and great-grandfather had been in the carpet business in Philadelphia at a place called Hearst Rogers, which was owned by another family. And that business was closing down. My great-grandfather retired. My grandfather went back to teaching. And then my great-grandfather got a call from a friend and said, hey, do you want to get back into the carpet business? And my great-grandfather said, sure, why not? And he ended up going to Detroit and buying 6 27-inch looms from Henry Ford. Because Henry Ford, as you may or may not know, was trying to run a vertical monopoly. He wanted to control all aspects of his automaking. And in those days, the carpet that went into cars was Wilton's.
Okay.
But he got the looms up there and couldn't get them running, so he just wanted to get rid of them. So my great-grandfather went up there, purchased them, and shipped them to what is now called Penndel, Pennsylvania. In those days, it was known as South Langhorne, hence the name Langhorne Carpet. People sort of wonder why we're called Langhorne in Penndel, but they changed the name after the Second World War to Penndel. But anyway, there was a train station here, and also there was a building that had been built in 1907, and it was the first mill in the area built with a freestanding roof, so that the interior of the building is wide open. If you go into earlier buildings, there's pillars everywhere. Mm-hmm. And when you see the looms, even the small looms, they take up a great deal of space, as do some of the other equipment. Also, as time went by, we were able to purchase broad looms. The width of a broad loom is 30-some feet. So you need large open spaces, makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
And so that's where they started. They took over the first half of the building. The back half was a hosiery and stayed a hosiery until just after World War II, and they left. And then we took over the rest of the building. And over time expanded a little bit to the footprint that we have now.
That's interesting to me, because I hadn't even thought about like the having to change the construction so you can have open, but yeah, in a shop space, it makes it much easier if you have, open space rather than having to work around, partitions.
Yes, if you've ever had a chance to visit mills in Philadelphia, and just because I know Philadelphia,
Right.
There were a lot of carpet mills in Philadelphia. In fact, most of the carpet in the early 20th century was made in Philadelphia, most of the carpet in America, and so there were dozens of mills. And when you would go down to these old mills, you would see the machines angled in here and there, getting them between the pillars. And for a lot of corporations, just having open space is just so much easier to work.
It is. Yeah, I'm thinking about when we're laying out a shop space, because we're primarily woodworkers. We need 16 feet in front of the machine, 16 feet, behind it. You need to be able to move the materials in and out.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, tell me about the products and services that you offer.
Well, I mean, we weave Wilton carpets. They are made on a Wilton jacquard loom. It's a specific style of carpet loom. For those who aren't familiar, which most aren't, it basically is mechanized hand weaving. If you've ever seen somebody hand weave and they're pushing a shuttle back and forth and they're pulling their reeds back and forth, that's basically how a Wilton carpet loom works. And the Wilton carpet looms were the first of the automated carpet loom designs, designed in the late 1700s. And the jacquard was actually, the first ones didn't have jacquards on them. That was developed in 1812 by a Frenchman named Jacquard. And what it enabled the carpet makers to do was to create pattern faster than they previously had to do manually, because now they had an automatic machine on the top of the loom that read from punch cards, not unlike what you would see in the old computers. If you grew up in the early days of computers and you had your stack of punch cards,
right?
It's a similar idea for a Wilton loom.
And then that puts the pattern into,
That's what creates the pattern of the carpet.
Okay. So it knows like where to put the different colors and
which colors, yes. Well, it's a combination of the jacquard and also the way the colors are placed in the back of the loom, because by placing colors in different spots, you can bring them up in different places in a pattern. So it's a combined effort of the way the yarns are actually, where they're tied into the loom, and the jacquard bringing those looms up to the surface to create the face of the carpet.
That makes sense to me. So you make the carpet. So are you limited by the I guess the loom width? So then do you have to sew them together?
Well, we have, originally looms were 27 inches wide.
Okay.
And I don't know why they picked 27 inch. I've been told it initially because of however the power was generated for the loom, that was as far as they could throw a shuttle.
Okay.
And so we still have 27-inch looms. We also have 36-inch looms, 9-foot looms, and 12-foot looms.
Okay.
Most of our general products for the public are made in 12-foot. Specialty items, and especially reproductions and restoration goods, are done in 27-inch because that's how they were originally made. And obviously you want as authentic a look as you can get when you're restoring a home or a building.
Yeah. That makes sense to me, because when I was on the website preparing for our interview today, I did notice that you do like custom also. So it's not, you can match historic patterns.
Yes.
and those, but then you
We
also
do. I mean,
do
people can
custom.
come to us and we can weave their initials in the carpet. We can put their family crest in the carpet. We're weaving one now for a customer where he took one of our old designs that had dates in it as part of the pattern, and we're changing the dates in it so they match the dates that his house was built.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
his house was built in 1751, so he wanted that in the carpet.
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun, and I think it's also. And we had a couple weeks ago. I interviewed a block wallpaper company,
Sure.
and he was talking about that they a lot of times some of their custom work is taking the old patterns, but then the designer wants to add like brighter colors, just
Oh,
non-traditional colors. And when I was on your website, I thought I was seeing some things like that too.
well, there's two types basically of well, to simplify it, of doing reproduction or restoration work is one where you have a house. For instance, we're working on Mary Baker Eddy's house in Boston, the lady who founded the Christian Science movement, and we're doing any number of rooms. Well, they have the original carpet,
Right.
so we are copying that as check for check, so that you get it. And we are trying to match the colors as best we can, working with 100-year-old carpet, to
Right.
get it to look as, as much as it did on the original when it was originally put in.
Right. Yeah.
Oftentimes you'll do some private homes where people have a Victorian home or even a colonial home, and they'd love to have the patterns. They want to do it in the styles, but the traditional colors, especially Victorian colors, were very, very bright, basically because, especially at night, the rooms were dark.
Right.
There was a little bit of electric later on, but a lot of it was gas lamps. So if you had dark colors in your carpet, it was dark. So you'd like to have bright colors in your carpet. So oftentimes there's that sort of, and that's generally for private homes where they want the feeling, but they want it in modern colors.
And you have that flexibility. Like I always,
Absolutely.
that's one thing that I often will tell people is like, as long as it can be undone, you're not doing anything that's going to hurt the house. It needs to be something you're going to be happy living in.
Yes, you have to live there.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you mentioned a couple of your projects, but I know you have a long list of notable projects on your website, but do you want to mention a couple and
Well,
talk
I mean,
about
right now they're installing Congress Hall in Philadelphia. This is actually the third time we've done it. We started, the first one was around 1980, and then it was about every 20 years since then, we've replaced the carpet. So it's gone down and stayed for 20 years, which certainly says something for the durability of it.
Right, because I'm sure that gets a lot of traffic.
Yes, and I mean, the other places we've done, Old Boston State House, Frederick Douglass's house. We're doing the Grundy Mansion in Bristol right now, Bristol, Pennsylvania. 2 years ago, we did Rutherford Hayes's house. I mean, ultimately, as far as the Park Service and the government's concerned, if you're doing a Wilton restoration in this country, you should be coming to us. We're the only mill in America that can do it.
Right.
There is one other mill in America that makes traditional Wiltons, but they do mostly or almost exclusively broadloom carpet, and we still have the narrow looms. So we try to get ourselves out there in front of the Park Service so they remember us.
Right.
And as long as it's a Wilton, generally we can copy it. Although Wiltons, like lots of types of equipment, there wasn't one set construction that every mill used. Some mills had slightly different, what we would call pitches, which is the number of ends across 27 inch. Some are wider, some are narrower, and we have the ones that we have used, which tend to be the most traditional. But generally, if it's a Wilton, we can copy it. What we've also done is copied what they call drum print velvets, which were carpets. But actually, my great-grandfather, that's what he originally did, was they would take a carpet and just weave a solid color, and then they would print it. but they wouldn't
Oh.
print it in the way we imagine it, with like a silk screen or something.
Uh-huh.
They would print all the yarns individually, so that when those yarns ran into the loom over the pile wires at a certain height, at a certain number per inch, it would create a pattern. If you changed any of those parameters, it would become an abstraction.
Okay.
And so how they did it, even though my great grandfather designed them, I don't know quite how they did it. They worked with drums somehow. And but again, the interesting thing is they were knockoffs of Wilton's, because they used about 15 to 20% of the amount of carpet that a comparable Wilton would use. So in the days when labor was cheap and materials were expensive, they didn't mind doing a lot of labor.
Right.
And so therefore they could make a less expensive piece of goods.
Right. So this was that then like a less expensive option?
Yes, it was a less expensive piece of goods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it probably, not that it wasn't difficult to set up, but it was.
But it was labor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
it was,
and labor was cheap.
Right. Right. So I saw that you use most or all, I guess, all natural wools and materials.
Well, the face of the carpet is 100% natural. We use wool and worsted wool. I mean, if someone came to me and said, for some whatever reason, they had to have nylon, I could do it.
Okay.
I usually ask them why. I don't see the point. We have done cotton for people because they want something softer. We can weave with linen, and these are done just for effect, for somebody who wants a different look. And if you weave linen and you have one color of linen and one color of wool and you mix them together, it gives you a very interesting contrast, not just of colors but textures. So we do those kind of things because we do a lot of specialty custom work. The backing of the carpet is mostly cotton and jute. However, we do use a little polyester in our fine chain. And also in the filling yarn is 50-50 poly cotton. We have not eliminated that yet. I have tried some other things, but at this point I haven't found the sources that they used 100 years ago. I'm not quite sure how they ran without those materials, but it leaves us running around 90 or 95% biodegradable and renewable.
Yeah, that's great. Does using the natural materials, does that create like if somebody's maintaining their carpet, do they just need to vacuum it, or are there special things that they need?
I mean, you put natural materials on the floor. I mean, right off the bat, wool doesn't burn.
Right.
If your house catches on fire, you have like 4 times as long to get out if you have wool carpet than if you have.
Right. Yes. I was. Yeah.
And when you're in a fire, it doesn't give off harsh chemicals. It doesn't give off noxious fumes. Wool, moisture in the air in your room. As the humidity rises, the wool will absorb the moisture, and then as the room dries out, it will release the moisture. However, it will pull all the pollens and dirt that was in the air when they pulled the moisture in, and it'll keep it in the carpet. One reason you need to vacuum it, because it's actually filtering your air.
Okay.
I always say you want natural fibers on your floors for the same reason you want to wear natural fibers.
Right.
I mean, not to mention that they're biodegradable and renewable, and are just more comfortable.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was, I think you had something about the flammability on the website, because it made me think that
flammability is a big thing. I mean, there was a time when all planes were required to have wool carpet in them, but now they just treat them with
like a flame retardant. Yeah. The because I know there was a video that I saw of like a room full of like traditional building materials and a room full of modern building materials, and which room was gonna
Sure,
be completely
absolutely.
engulfed in flames. So it makes sense to me to look at the entirety of the interior and make sure that
For animals and for
right.
animals and children crawling on the floor, it's nice to have them on a natural fiber rather than a synthetic.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I think that's an important point that I don't know if everybody thinks about. Maybe they're just thinking about it from a historic aspect, but I
Yes,
think from a living in the building and having the building be as healthy as possible, I think that's also very important.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, what do you wish that you knew when you started that you know now?
I wish I knew how popular restoration work was going to become, because
Oh
I
yeah.
would have, as the years I've been here, slowly one after another, various Wilton mills closed, and they all had their design libraries, but nobody ever thought to buy them. You
Oh
were of the
yeah.
mindset, well, who's going to want these old things? and now I just wish I had that because it would just be a wonderful archive to have.
Yeah, I actually was, and it's not exactly the same, but I was doing some research for one of my consulting projects, and that was about the historic, like the local historic significance of a building. And the woman who had lived in the building, she was a hook rug maker, and
Sure.
all of her patterns are at the historical society here. And I didn't even realize that would be something that they would have.
Well, it
Yeah,
really is. It's
yeah,
a history, and then of course the older designs are all hand done. They're really like pieces of art. They're painted,
yes, yes.
and you could frame them and put them on the wall. So I mean, there was a lot of effort to get into it. I mean, that's one thing now that's good about computers, is the fact that we can replicate them quickly, so we don't have to worry about, it used to be once you had a check paper, somebody would say, mail it to me, and you'd say, no way. I don't want to risk getting it lost because
Right.
it'll all be created again.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, I forget sometimes how spoiled we are to be able to just like scan something and send it off.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So what challenges or trends do you see in preservation?
I don't think there's, the trend in preservation is just more people doing it.
Okay.
I think it's become a bigger, at least from the carpet point of view, people are now looking at carpet more importantly as being an intricate part of the restoration.
Right.
It used to be people would come in and they're looking at the draperies and they're looking at the woodworking, and they're sort of looking at the floor, and of course, sadly, oftentimes the floor is the most beat up, so it's hardest to tell what's there. But people are really making an effort to get the right floor coverings and use them in their restorations. And of course, it's fun. There's nothing more exciting than working on a restoration. Doing the historic work on it, and of course some of these, we've done designs where the best they could give us was a black and white photograph
Oh
and
my
tell
goodness.
us that
Yeah.
it had 5 colors in it. You do your best to try and
Right.
bring out at least the feeling of that design. So
Yeah.
it's just, and more people are into it. I think more and more people are into taking their home. And of course, now if your home's 1920 or 1950,
Right.
you're looking at doing a reproduction or a restoration piece. Arts and crafts. Frank Lloyd Wright designed carpet. And as you get into even the 60s, a lot of the architects were designing furniture and carpet.
Right, to go into the houses. Yeah,
Exactly.
that mid-century modern is very popular.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there anything that I forgot to ask you about, or that you thought about while we were talking, that you wanted to kind of bring up or highlight?
No, I just said. I guess we're probably one of the best well-kept secrets in America.
Well, I hope that this
At
helps.
this point, for the narrow goods, for the 27-inch loom, I think we're down to about maybe 6 or so manufacturers in the world that are
Oh my
still doing
goodness.
it.
Yeah.
So, so if anybody's looking, we are here in America.
Well, that's good to know. Actually, I don't know if Laura mentioned when she reached out to you about doing the podcast, but we found out about you because we did a ghost mural podcast with oh, I can't think of his first name, from Temple University, and he mentioned you doing the mural on the side of your building as
Oh yeah, yes.
yes, and she and when she listened to it, she was like, Danielle, do you think they would be a good podcast guest? So I'm glad that we found out about you too.
Well, yeah, there are. There's a number of little places around. I'm not quite sure. Where are you located?
We're in Lancaster.
Oh, okay. I mean, there's a place 20 minutes down the mill from me. It's called Stone Mills that makes braided rugs. It's a 2-man operation that still makes braided rugs by, custom braided rugs. There's lots of little, it's funny that there are lots of little, not lots, but there's a few
Right.
little specialty people still hanging out here and there, trying to stay in the niche markets, for, and a lot of times for historical things.
Yes, yeah, that is interesting, but I think it's also important because as all the other looms closed and you lost that knowledge, it's really important work to keep.
Yeah, I mean, once it's gone, it's gone.
Right. Yes. So is there anything that you have to promote? I know no people aren't doing lectures or anything or having events, but is there anything that you wanted to promote?
No, not, I mean, we're like everybody else. We're just working along here, trying to keep busy. Things are tough. It's, I mean, now a lot of the competition, especially not for reproduction, but for general broadloom, which is the majority of our business, is from China, India, places where obviously labor's cheap, and so we're constantly trying to battle that. But other than that, no, we're constantly working to come out with new lines, new colors. That's always the trick of the trade. What are people going to buy? What's the hot color? Yeah. So that's where we are.
So how can someone contact you?
Well, they can email us at sales, SALES, at Langhorne, LANGHORNE, carpets, CARPTS.com. Excuse me. And also they can always call the mill if they're local. Okay. It's 215-757-5155. People are welcome to come to the mill to look for carpet. We also occasionally give tours. Obviously not in the COVID time, but hopefully this will be over at some point. So we do give tours because our mill is pretty much what a mill would have looked like in 1890. So it's kind of fun for people to come and see it.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for coming on today. I enjoyed our conversation.
It's good fun.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.